because he just finished giving them the law the second time in Deuteronomy. That's what Deuteronomy means. Okay, so Paul is recalling to the audience this time when Moses did that in Romans 10:6. But the righteousness that is by faith, in other words, you believe the word you're given, says, do not say in your heart who will ascend into heaven. Because you got it right here. You've memorized it. In the old days, they memorized the law. It's in their mouth, they talk about it. It's in their heart, they memorize it by heart. So do not say in your heart, who will ascend to heaven, as if you didn't have it. Then Paul adds this cute thing, that is to bring Christ down. You know, because back in Deuteronomy, he hadn't yet come. Okay, but Christ is risen now. So we don't have to bring him back down to earth to give us the word. The word has already ascended into heaven. But the righteousness that is by faith, says Romans 10:6, do not say in your heart who will ascend into heaven, that is to bring Christ down, as if he hadn't come down yet. Okay, now we go to Romans 10:7. Or who will ascend into the deep, that is to bring Christ up from the dead. Because he'd already gone to Hades, he already rose, so he doesn't have to go back down again because he finished. That's what telos in Romans 10:4 was about. Okay? Now, when Paul is saying, who will ascend into the deep, in Romans 10:7, he's still quoting Deuteronomy. Now he's gone to Deuteronomy 30:13. Deuteronomy 30:13 reads, nor is it, the word, beyond the sea, so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea and get it, and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it. See? It's very funny. Okay, here's the pivotal verse. Deuteronomy 30:14. No, it's not too high and it's not too low. The word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so you may obey it. In other words, they know what it is, but they don't believe in it. It's like, I know that if I don't stop at a red light, that I'm breaking the law. The law is stop at the red light. Okay, so it's in my mouth, I can repeat it, and it's in my heart, I've memorized it, but do I believe it? Well, if I decide I'm going to go through a red light, then I didn't believe it, did I? Okay? So that's Deuteronomy 30:14. No, the word, don't go through a red light, is very near you. Yeah, it's in my mouth. I can repeat it. It's in my heart. I've got it memorized so that you may obey it. Well, you're not going to obey something you don't believe in. That's the problem in Deuteronomy 30. They got the word in their mouth. They got the word in their heart. They memorized it, you know, but they didn't obey it. Why? Because they didn't believe in it. It's not too difficult then if it's in your mouth and you've got it memorized, so you can repeat it and, oh, I know this by heart. Yeah, okay, so why don't you believe it already? That's the backdrop Paul is talking about in Romans 10:8. Look what he says. But what does it say? This is quoting Deuteronomy 30:14 again. What does it say? The word. The word is near you. It is in your mouth, and it is in your heart. You memorized it. That is the word of faith we are proclaiming. So now he's talking to the Romans. Hi, we've already told you the gospel. You can repeat it back. We've already told you the gospel. All right? You got to memorize. That's the word of faith we are proclaiming. In other words, the Romans are priding themselves on being better than the Jews. Okay, but they're making the same arguments or doing the same thing as the Jews in Deuteronomy 30. So Paul is scolding them. Paul's been scolding the Romans since chapter 1, and he keeps it up. So, no, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you may obey it, dummy. But they're not. So you see now what Romans 10:7 and 10:8 is talking about? It's drawing a parallel to Deuteronomy 30. Specifically, verses 10 through 14, which we just saw. Now let's get to Romans 10:9. This is where we have to go to our other passage. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. Now, Paul's talking about raising from the dead because he's been talking about who's going to go up to heaven, who's going to go down here. All right? So he just short circuits the cross. You know, he's already talked about that. But see, God raised him from the dead. So he's already up there. He already won. It's finished. Telos, the end of the law. Romans 10:4. And you believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Now let's take a little trip to Matthew 7. Matthew 7, starting at verse 21. Let's start at verse 19. This is a passage all these Christians get wrong because they don't read the couple of verses that are just before. Like the people in Romans 10 who tell you have to say aloud to your speak aloud that you believe in order to be saved. They're not reading Romans 10:1 through 10:8. So too, the people that tell you you have to be fruit-bearing, they're not reading the very passage that they're quoting. Look at this. Matthew 7, because this ties to Romans 10:9. Matthew 7, beginning at verse 19. I'm still reading in the NIV. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Now, what fruit is he talking about? Well, duh. He's talking about the fruit of teaching, the fruit of belief. And if you look at the verses just prior, okay, you will see that that's what he's talking about. Alright, now, thus, this is 7:20, thus by their fruit of belief, of doctrine, of teaching, you will recognize them. Look at Matthew 7 for yourself and see it. Now, this ties directly to Romans 10:9. Remember, Matthew had long been out before Paul wrote Romans. The Lord says in it might have been 29 AD, many will say to me on that day, Matthew 7:22, Lord! Okay, do you get that? Lord! They're calling him Lord. What is Paul saying in Romans 10:9? Alright? In Romans 10:9, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord. Okay, that's what these people are doing in Matthew 7:22. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? So they're teachers. Got that? And in your name did we not drive out demons and perform many miracles? They're confessing with their mouth, aren't they? Of course, you know how this passage turns out. Romans 7:23, then I will tell them plainly, away from me, you evildoers. So confessing is not exactly going to save you, is it?